are live. Awesome. Okay, so guys, while I'm about to do the introduction, if you want to send out your link to this video, you can go ahead and do that right now. If there's anyone you need to Facebook Messenger, or anything
I wouldn't
like
know
that.
how to do that.
Well,
I think I've sent some links. I hope they work.
Well, everyone, welcome to 21st Century Saints. We are a new podcast and live stream series for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and those who are affiliated or adjacent to the church in the British Isles and around the world. I'm your host, Jane Christie. We also have my co-host, Alana Wilson-Bryce.
Hey everyone.
And tonight I am super excited because recently we got to meet Debbie. So I'm going to introduce you all to, this is Deborah Squires-Coleman, to use your full Sunday name. Do you want to say hi?
Hi.
And we're just going to pretty much tell the world why we think you're amazing. That's the plan for tonight's discussion, just nice and informal so that everyone can get to know you. What's wonderful is that Deborah, who we're going to go with Debbie tonight. Is that okay? Shall we go with Debbie?
Yeah, that's what everybody calls me.
Debbie
my
has
daughter's just texted me and said, "Put your screen down a bit, Mum."
Oh.
Thank you, family. Please keep us posted if there's anything that we need to know. That's a really good shout. And thanks to the viewers who are already sending messages out on our live feed. Please keep on doing that. We love the questions in the comments. So like I was saying, Debbie has no idea why she is as amazing as she is and why people have been talking about you a lot. And I love that you're just doing your thing, and it's so cool. So Alana and Debbie, this is the first time that you guys have met.
Absolutely, yep.
Welcome to each other.
Yep.
Debbie, do you want to let us know a little bit about who you are, where you're from, your family, that kind of thing?
Yeah, really briefly. I've got 5 children and 12 grandchildren. My early years were in West London, East London, but now since I was 16, I've been an Essex girl. So I absolutely love living here because it's close enough to London, but still got the countryside. So I really like it. I'm in the South End branch. And that's just, well, every ward I've been to has been lovely as well, but I'm just really enjoying it there. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so you've got a big family. Yeah, I can't even imagine. Alana, you're a big family too, right?
Yeah, my mum's got 5 kids and we've got 14 grandchildren and 5, almost 6 great grandchildren my mum and dad have.
And that isn't super common in the British Isles. I'm aware that we're broadcasting around the world, but it's not super common to have.
I think my age group is.
Yeah.
But my children have had like 2, 3. They really plan their families more than we did. We just followed the prophet and had kids.
We were just talking about that last night.
Yeah, we were. Yeah.
Family planning advice. Yeah, consult your local handbook. It's so good that we were talking about last night. There's been a big difference in how child reading has been spoken about at church. Yeah. So I guess then what our viewers are going to want to know first of all is, so why are we talking to you? What's your church pedigree? Who are you in the church in the UK?
Well, I'm nobody, actually. It's just
You're all nobody.
I suppose I got to an age where I was able to look a little clearer at things. I had the time and the energy. And so I kind of got involved with equality issues, really, just as vocally. And then I used the platform of being on the Relief Society presidency stake to do a few firesides, devotionals, and so actually somebody called me a connector because I don't know anything. I had little education as a kid. I'm really a slow processor, so I don't keep information very well either. I read a lot, but I can't remember what I read.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. So, but somebody said to me, "You're a connector." So all I do is connect people with other people who know something.
Yeah,
that's all I do.
Wonderful.
So yeah, sorry, Alana, you
No,
go.
I was just going to say, so what kind of callings have you had within the church? Just out of
Okay,
interest?
well, all the, Relief Society President, ward-wise, quite a few times, Stake Relief Society Presidency, Stake Young Women's Primary, Ward Primary.
So everything then.
Just, what all the callings a woman can hold, I suppose.
And Ward Relief Society President that's an intense one, right?
Yeah, I must admit, the last time I did it, it kind of, I didn't have to step back from the church after I did it last time, but I kind of had to step a bit back, just a bit of self-care for a few months.
Into the
I think we all
self-care.
have to do that after a heavy calling, don't we?
Absolutely, because there's so much to that kind of calling. You really are focusing on people and needs, and yeah.
But
so
it was nice. I mean, Relief Society is my place. I love Relief Society, and I love the sisters. So it was all good, and it was a good time. Just a bit tiring. That's all. But
absolutely.
That's okay. So.
And for me, I think especially as we're going to be talking about women, as we go through this conversation, I think for me, Relief Society, I remember. So I'm a convert to the church, and I remember. So I'm going to ask about that. I'm going to ask about your story. But yeah, having a sacred female space has been really important for me. So I love it, and so thank you for your service and Relief Society. I guess I just wanted to just acknowledge that, because there is a lot to it. So you weren't raised in the church. You're a convert to the church, right?
No, my sister was an Osman fan, and
I love it.
Yeah, so she said she was going to write to find out the church, and my dad said, "Don't you dare do that, they'll send missionaries round." And she said, "No, they won't," but of course they did. So it took, I think, 2 years for us to join. So they sent them around when I was about 16, and we didn't join until I was 18. So we all joined, my mum and dad and my sister and myself and my young brother. He was too young to get baptized, but yeah. So we all joined, I think about 76 it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that whole time I assume that you have married someone who is an active member?
I met my husband. I said to a friend of mine, I've always wanted to go out with somebody in a uniform, and I was thinking of a pilot or something glamorous. And she said, "Well, I know a policeman." I thought, well, that'll do. That uniform would do all right. So he wasn't a member. I remember trying to teach him the law of tithing in a pub. It didn't go down very well at that time, but yeah, he joined.
That is such a British Latter-day Saint thing.
Well, wait till I tell you about our wedding plans. That'll really blow your mind.
Okay, no, you have to do it now. Let's do it.
Okay, I thought it might be a bit too early. So because my whole family and I joined the church at the same time, I didn't have anybody to teach me about the church and the things that you do in the church. And in the 70s, we were all converts anyway. There were very few who had been brought up in the church. So I was being taught by converts. Our leaders were converts, Young Women's Presidency. Everybody was a convert. So we all learned from books. So there was no lived experience. And so there was nobody to really talk about wedding nights or what you wear or anything like.
So I think we might have lost you a little bit, Debbie. So yeah, so we lost you for just a little second there, Debbie. So okay, so so Debbie, we lost you for just a little second. So can we just rewind back, because I feel this story is going to be epic. Can we rewind back to there is no one to tell you?
Yeah.
And
No one to tell us about wedding nights, or all I know is I was taught out of the Institute book that you don't ever take your garments off. That's all I knew. There was no nuance about it. Yep. It was just you keep your garments on all the time. So to facilitate that, I brought this kind of Victorian looking dressing gown, night dress. Beautiful, like green smock thing. My husband's never been so disappointed in all his life. And then before, when we were getting interviewed to get my temple recommends and his, because he was a convert as well, so he hadn't gone on a mission. We were told the temple would be closed the day we got married and wouldn't be open for 3 more days. So I'm looking at Kevin, and Kevin's looking at me, because we're thinking, all right, we've been taught that you don't do anything until you've been sealed, because you're not properly married. So we're looking at the stake president, actually was the bishop at the time, and I said, what do we do? Now, this poor man, like, he's not trained for this, is he? And he's the gentlest and nicest of men. And he said, well, if it was me, I would wait. So I'm thinking, if it was him, he would wait. So that means that we should wait. Me and my husband, 3 days in the same bed, not doing a thing.
Horrified by that story.
Oh, you poor couple.
Because what did I know? We were learning out of books. There was nobody really to tell us. My mum and dad hadn't gone through, they'd gone through the temple, but only as older people. They were in their 40s when they went through. So there's nobody really to ask. Really.
That's amazing. I love that.
Thank you for your
I did teach my daughters better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these are the honest stories that we really don't get to talk about very often. So I really appreciate your bravery in talking about it.
I did get permission.
Yeah. So when you had permission to, I guess enjoy being married, I'm wondering, what did you make of your temple experience? Was that, I'm just thinking you've had no one to talk to you about being married.
No.
The temple?
And you didn't get as much. I mean, you get more. There's more openness now. We don't talk about the signs and tokens and stuff, but we are able to talk about the promises. So no, I didn't know anything, but I had been through before with my dad and my mum, because when we joined the church, a year after, they went through to be sealed, and obviously I was sealed with them, and I was 17 coming on 18 then, or actually 18 probably. So that really wasn't a shock to me when I went through for myself.
Okay. Yeah. So can we talk then, and just kind of let you go where you want with this? Could we talk about your faith journey and what that's looked like for you?
Yeah, so I've kind of always been interested. My dad was, he wasn't so much interested in local politics, but he was always interested in local things that were going on locally, that politics affected. And we were, we lived on a council estate, and so we were very, my dad was into the Tenants Association thing. So I was brought up going on marches with my dad to London and things. So, so that was kind of in my DNA a bit, to push back on things sometimes. But I married when I was 21, then bang, 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 children, 5 children. And so it wasn't until the last one got older, and then but I've forgotten, during that period, I'm sure they might not see this, but they won't know. My mum and dad and my sister and brother-in-law, about 15 years ago, I suppose, all left the church. They, church history, just things that didn't gel with them, left the church. I didn't handle it very well. I hadn't been taught how to handle it, to be honest.
So when you say you didn't handle it very well, what did that look like? What?
Rift in the family. Just not, I don't think anything nasty was said, but just our closeness, we just drifted apart. We're well on the way to making that better now. It was a sad time. I personally felt abandoned. You know, I didn't understand what was going on in their lives. And I don't think I was much help to them either. So, and I'm not saying it was all me, and it definitely wasn't all them. It was just we weren't taught to handle this situation.
Yeah.
So that happened, and then I went on a mission where I had time to study, and I think being around a lot of men. There were a few sister missionaries there, but not many. But I just felt like Kevin was in his element, you know, but I felt like I was in a boys' club. And I really found it difficult because in Greece, weren't very many women in the branch I was in. There was only one active woman, and just all the other couples were a long way away, and they didn't think like I thought. You know, they're lovely people, really lovely people. But I remember saying to one sister at one point, "I wish I could wear trousers," and I was just like, "Well, that's not very feminine, is it?" And I just thought, I don't know. I was finding it hard to find a place, so it was quite difficult for me. So that time gave me time to think, and I'd been working anyway before with special needs children, and I just suppose their difficulties in accessing the world and making sense of their place kind of resonated with me a bit in the church, of my place as a woman. And that kind of led, and I always think, once you see one injustice or unfairness, you can't help but see the rest. You can't. And so that's what got me interested into, you know, what our LGBTQ brothers and sisters were suffering as well. So that's kind of where I am, really. And that, I think once you start that process as well, you know, I can't say that I had a faith crisis, but I've had a good journey, and that's been a learning curve as well.
Yeah. Well, what things, you know, I've been thinking about what sort of things I wanted to ask you about your journey, and I feel for me it is so relatable. I really have related a lot to your experiences. I know that Alana, you served a mission, so Debbie, you were in Greece, right?
Yes.
And your husband was also serving in Greece, right?
Yeah, married couples. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're serving as a right.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's really awesome.
Yeah. I'm glad we did it, and I did learn an awful lot. I'm not sure actually how much difference we made, but I you know, I learned quite a lot. And you know, everybody says, don't they, the people that you meet, it's lovely they're just lovely people.
So tell me the things then that you love about church. Not just like, what things do you love about church?
I love the people. I just love Relief Society. I just love the sisters. I love being able to serve and feeling part of that community that does that. I think, so have you read Richard Rohr's Falling Upwards?
Falling Upwards, yeah, got it right
Have you
here.
got it? Yeah.
Mhm.
So it was when I read that I realised what the church had really done for me. It gave me such a wonderful first first stage of life? First stage of life foundation.
So could you explain a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, I told you about not remembering things, didn't I? So you'll have to...
Just your interpretation of how...
Yeah. So the first stage of life is the foundations, kind of symbolism, I would say the programs, everything that helps us to build a foundation on. So we build our faith on a foundation, the community, maybe you can add some things as well.
Yeah, I think that the structure...
Wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. The structure that we have is quite clearly laid out. We're sort of taken through, for converts, there's a missionary program where there are stages.
Yeah, exactly, the programs. Yeah. And so, and the second stage of life is where you kind of build on that and you find your own way. And my kind of journey at the moment is finding my own way, but within the organisation. And I know a lot of people have said that I can't do that, but at the moment I'm being able to do that. Lockdown has been pretty good for me to do that because there are some things in the church that are so beautiful and other people find it beautiful, but sometimes it doesn't work for everybody, does it? So like, I can see that prayer is beautiful, but sometimes I just want to put on a record like a worship song and just dance around the room and really just praise him, and stick my hand up in the air, be a bit evangelical. I wouldn't do it in front of anybody, but I just love it in the morning. And I would never have thought of doing that before lockdown, but it's given me a kind of freedom to find a little bit of my own way. I still say my prayers, but I really find a different kind of connection in that. So I'm valuing what the church has given me. I'm just kind of building on it a bit. Things that suit me better.
Yep.
So as I think about, you're talking about Richard Rohr's book, and one of the things that he says about being in the second half of life, when you know you're truly in the second half of life, you don't look back at people who are still in the first half of life and think, oh, you're doing it all wrong. Why are you not in the second half of life? Which is so difficult. So while I feel like I'm in the second half of life, realistically, I'm not always. I still
you go backwards and forwards, didn't you?
Right.
Yeah.
So we, when we're talking about prayer, we would have a sort of first half of life thing would be how we're taught to pray in church. So we're gonna talk to God. This is who God is. Literally to talk about a formatted prayer. We address, we thank, we ask, we close in Jesus's name. And that's wonderful. And you learn how to pray. But then the second half of life is where, you're like, okay, something else. Am I really connecting to God or to the divine? Am I having an experience here where I'm connecting with the divine? And that's magical. That's beautiful. But I feel like, as we're talking about the experience, the lived experience of women in this conversation, so many of us are so many viewers, so many Latter-day Saint women will not relate whatsoever to what we're speaking about. So many people who pray will not relate to the fact that, you know, we could do something different. You know, prayer works for them. It's, you know, it's a comfortable place to be in. You're learning and growing and connecting. Fantastic. And so I guess I'm just taking this moment to sort of say, okay, so you may hear some things that are someone's experience, and you've never experienced that before, and you don't, that's not where you're at, and that's great. That's really, really great. But for other people, that there may be some sort of tension in our lived experience in being women in the church. So you're talking about things that you love about church. What makes it your spiritual home?
It's I mean, I was a Catholic, but because my mum had married a Protestant, they weren't allowed to really get married on the altar place. You know, they were considered second. They were from an Irish background, my mum was, so they were considered, their marriage was considered a bit second class, really. So I think once my mum got married, there was not really any church involved. So I learned, I think that's where I learned my foundational connection to God. And I'm so grateful that the church introduced me to Christ. And that's what it's all about for me. If I can't bring something back to Christ, then I don't really, you know, I want to be in the church. I want to bring it back to Christ. There has to be a connection to Christ, you know. And Heavenly Mother, I mean, Heavenly Mother, for goodness sake, how cool is that?
Absolutely.
And that's another thing that I do in my prayers, you know, I bring her into my prayers.
Yep.
Let's talk about that. That's so Heavenly Mother. I know a lot of you know, members of the church would, you know, wouldn't term it in this way, but Heavenly Mother is still a controversial subject in that we don't teach really about Heavenly Mother during our classes. We tend to not be encouraged to pray to Heavenly Mother, and yet many women are teaching Heavenly Mother and are praying to Heavenly Mother. So could you speak to that a little bit about, well, why? I mean, we have God, right? So why is that something that was important to you?
It's having somebody to relate to, isn't it? I mean, God. When we say God, do we mean Heavenly Mother and Heavenly Father? You know, is that what we're talking about? I don't know. But I do know that there has to be a feminine aspect in there somewhere. So if that's Heavenly Mother, that's who I want to connect to. Somebody like me who might have had feelings like I do. So my husband's got a real testimony, testimony about the afterlife and going to the celestial kingdom. And I told him a couple of months ago, and I said, Kev, if the celestial kingdom is how we used to be taught about it, now we're not taught about it now like this, about being gods and goddesses and having a world. We don't hear that taught, but it is still out there. We don't hear it at conference, but it's in old talks, so it's still taught. I don't want to go to a heaven just to spend eternity having children, for them to then be sent to a world where they can never talk to me again. I don't want that. So I can't see my Heavenly Mother not hear my voice. That's just doesn't seem right to me. I can't ignore her anymore. I can't.
Yeah. See, I think for me, obviously, and I think this is quite a common thing, having grown up in the church, is that, you know, I used to ask, and I've asked multiple times over my journey, and I've always had the same answer. Why do we not talk of a Heavenly Mother? You know, why do we always just talk about God and Jesus? Because, you know, surely we've got a Heavenly Mother, you know, and I always got the same answer. It's, you know, it's because she's so sacred, and, you know, Heavenly Father thinks of the way he's brought down and Jesus is brought down, and he doesn't want that for Heavenly Mother. And I used to totally be like, yeah, well, yeah, that's, you know, I was young and I accepted that, and I thought, okay. But as I've got older, I'm thinking, no, that's not a good answer. And it's not the answer. I think sometimes people, you know, tend to make things up a little bit as they go along and how they interpret things. And I think, you know, again, for me, it comes into this. I think Jane is turning me into a bit of a feminist, you know, like, why should a woman not be looked at and talked about and praised the way that Jesus and God are, whether people are a little bit demeaning towards her? Is it wrong for men but not for women? You know, like, so I guess for me, that was something I found a little bit problematic for myself. You know, is that why aren't we talking about her?
So could we speak to that then? I'm aware that some of the people who are in chat are speaking to this, that this is a needed discussion, that you are not the only person, Debbie, Alana, people who are commenting, not the only person who has a longing for Heavenly Mother. So let's speak to that for a minute. Is she too sacred?
No, it's like a lot of things in the church, isn't it? That they don't have the answer. It's the patriarchy, and patriarchy has hidden her from us, and now these days they have to find an answer why they do that, but it's not really an answer. I mean, it's like putting women. They still put women on pedestals, don't they? You know, it's too precious. You're special. You know, you're special. You're on a pedestal, and that's what they do to Heavenly Mother, and that's what they do a lot to us in the church. But there's a danger in doing that.
There is, and I mean, we're looking forward to having a series of discussions on Heavenly Mother, and one of the things that we're looking to address, just to sort of get it out there. You know, let's talk about it right now, that the idea that Heavenly Mother is too sacred is, it's different from Heavenly Mother being so sacred. Heavenly Mother's so sacred, but too sacred to speak about is, was an idea that it doesn't really have a lot of basis in church teachings, and that it all seems to sort of be stemming from a talk from a seminary teacher at one point.
Just an idea that someone threw out there, and then it was grabbed.
And we held it, and because it's comforting. But speaking about Heavenly Mother, it happened in the early church. It was just, it wasn't a thing that needed to be addressed. So women today, when we have this longing to speak about, to hear about, to talk to Mother in Heaven, we really, really do have that longing. And so, yes, it's definitely my prayer that we can have those conversations. And let's talk about the spiritual gifts of women. If we are taught that in primary, if we're teaching our primary children, I'm a child of God, I have a body like God. Well, I don't. I have a body like I have a body like Heavenly Father. Well, we don't. We have a body like Heavenly Mother. So what does that? All of these discussions that are so rich and beautiful, and is within our beautiful theology.
Exactly,
I love that.
it's there.
The church. Yeah, it's there.
It is there.
So this is the part, I guess, where we're going to talk a little bit about your. Sorry, Alana, did you have a comment?
I know I was talking and I forgot I was muted. I was just saying, I want to just acknowledge Claire McFadden's comment there. I think it's wonderful. Not going to the full, she said, that it gave the impression that we knew little about Heavenly Mother because Heavenly Father wanted to protect her. This suggests Heavenly Mother is fragile and sensitive. This is a God, a powerful, magnificent deity. I think we need to acknowledge her more as a role model for women. Amen to that. I love that. I think that's such a powerful statement right there.
I bought a T-shirt that says, is it fragile like not fragile like a flower, but fragile like a bomb.
Oh, beautiful.
She is not fragile.
And you know how desperate we are. I mean, I've shared this often with Alana, that I remember going to watch Wonder Woman in the cinema, and I remember, you know, at the beginning, for those who've seen the movie, I remember this image of female divinity and strength. And I mean, every time I remember it, it's almost like recalling a temple experience. Me and women around the world who were Latter-day Saints had this powerful response from our souls to that image, because we have this longing to, you know, we don't get to hear about this, and the idea that we would have to protect a mother in heaven by you know, putting her in some kind of room, closing the door, and telling her children not to speak to her because she's so sacred behind that closed door. I imagine that we have a mother in heaven who's going to ask us to account for that. You know,
but that's why I love the sisters of the church so much, because maybe it's because the ward I'm in, the sisters are always so vulnerable. I mean, they don't just pour everything out, but they don't hide themselves. It's very authentic women, and when you hear their stories, you're thinking, these women are amazing. The things they've gone through, and yet still have the capacity to love. It's incredible.
yes,
Absolutely incredible. And if we have come from a woman like that, and we don't talk about her, and we don't try to think about her power and her love, like, we are missing out on something. We have been robbed. That's something I feel such a lot about sometimes, that I have been robbed of some things, you know, that they've given us this beautiful start of a theology, and then it's just been squished a bit, and I feel robbed of that.
I'm really blessed that we have our current bishop, who has just been practically built with the church. You know, he's been there for a really long time, and has been I think almost only person who has consistently mentioned her, and when she is mentioned, it's like oxygen. And I remember speaking with him in his office to thank him for that, because we needed it. And so I think it's really good to hear, you know, to hear the voice of women speak about Heavenly Mother, you know, just to acknowledge we do need to hear about her, because you know, men in the church having a masculine experience, and if they don't know that we need to hear it, it's just nice, I think, just to remind people who are planning lessons and talks and firesides that it's really important to me that you talk about that thing. Thank you for doing that. So you know, it's acknowledging it. As you talk about women in the church, I guess, and we talk about church being a spiritual home for you, in your role as a connector, could you speak to the question, is our church a spiritual home for everyone?
I would not at the moment. No, that pains me to say that. Actually,
I was just going to say, I could see the pain as you said that.
Yeah, I just so want it to be, but I don't see how it can be when there's harm being done by some of the doctrine.
And would you elaborate on that?
you brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would. I personally don't know how you could decide to be celibate. Absolutely, if it works for you, great. But for those people who can't be celibate their whole life, and making them do that to have a proper place at the table, a real place at the table.
Yeah. See, I think that's something I've struggled a little bit with, is, that they say that there is a place at the table, but only if you, as you say, adhere to the teachings that you need to be celibate and you can't act upon how you really and truly are. And I find that the God that I believe in, and this is totally my opinion, I will just put that out there, it's not church teachings.
All of this is,
that,
yeah.
that I just always like to say that in case anyone's listening that isn't sure, and I think the God that I believe in is inclusive of everyone, and I don't believe that he's only inclusive that way. I believe, I've said I don't believe that God makes mistakes, and I don't believe that people wake up one day and decide that they're gay or that they feel like a man or they feel like a woman. I don't believe that. Whereas a lot of my life I've been taught that from church members, that, it's a choice, and I do not believe that. I do not stand with that. And I just think, as I've said in the past, I see the pain that it causes, and I don't believe that God wants people to be caused pain, although it happens to many of us for various reasons. But I can't in my heart of hearts believe that God wants people to be in that pain because of who they are.
Yeah. I mean, I know it at one point that it's going to change. I might not be alive. I don't know when it will happen, but things have always changed in the church, especially when it comes to equality issues. So it will change. I don't know when or how that's going to happen, but I have a lot of hope it will. But my heart goes out to our brothers and sisters who have to deal with that at the moment.
So this is a really broad question, but when we talk not just about LGBTQ issues, but also even if you wanted to speak more to what you see as the experience of women in church, things that maybe that you have found unsettling, could you talk about those, but also talk about what possibilities do you see? What are the possibilities for right now? So we may see change down the road. Who knows? I love that so many people see it as almost part of their testimony that, yeah, I mean, we're in a living church, things are going to change. So I love that. But what about right now? What are the possibilities for an inclusive church, or one where everyone can feel like this is their spiritual home?
Well, I can see that where the leadership, it's a Pandora's box that eventually has got to be opened. I kind of see that this is just a theory of mine, and I'm probably totally wrong, but I kind of think that the church are letting people like the Givenses, Bushmen, Reeves just push stuff out there, and not pushing back on it at all, but letting them kind of gently change the culture. And it gives the church leaders a safe place as well, because if they feel that there's pushback from members, then they can address that. I'm hoping they want to change, but I'm also very aware that, you've got the old guard that they've been brought up with women will never get the priesthood. They've been told that since they were small. I don't know what would happen for their testimonies if the prophet turned around tomorrow and said, well, the sisters are going to get the priesthood. So it's going to be a slow thing. It's going to be a gradual introduction. But there's been a lot of talk recently about women in the priesthood. There's been a lot of talk about power and authority and how the women have got it and how they can use it. But to be honest, I know that it's been tried to make sense of, but it doesn't really make sense to me what's been said. It's kind of trying to make sense of like trying to get all the pieces about all the letters out of alphabet soup. It's kind of trying to make sense of it all. And I don't even think the leaders really can make sense of it at the moment. And until I think they start giving women more responsibility and more power and building on that, it won't make sense, because we're trying to square a circle. Really, it's not going to work. Not under what we believe the priesthood to be at the moment, just only for males. I try and get my head around what they're talking about authority and power and how women have got it and stuff. And I can kind of see it a bit, but it doesn't really make proper sense. When you dig down into it, when you hear it at a conference, you kind of think, oh yeah, that sounds good. Or when you hear it in a lesson, you think that sounds good. But when you go around and really like dig into it, it's like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. When you're applying it, when you're living it, there is more that we need to know. There's and what I think is very cool is that we can look up ahead to these conversations broadening and happening. What I think is very cool is that things can happen right now in the existing structure, and you're kind of doing that, Debbie. That's, you're doing some pretty cool stuff. Now, I will be specific on that if you need me to be, but can I just guess that you know what I'm alluding to here? What stuff are you doing right now to be that person who's acting within their authority, who is speaking to the needs of the marginalized, and without having to feel like you're crossing some kind of line?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm really, really lucky that I am working with a Relief Society president who gets it. But she is so much better than me, because she's just so much more centered, and she has all the passion, but she really knows how to direct stuff. And so it's been really lovely working with her. So I might, get an idea, and she'll help me with it, and she'll run with me. And we've also got a state president who's really aware of women's issues and trying to address that at the moment. So I'm just really lucky. So what I do is I'll use my position to organise firesides or devotionals, whatever we call them now. And we did a video about anti-racism about a year ago. So it's really little stuff. And so that's why somebody called me a connector, because what I do is I have an idea and I just get people in who know more about it. We had one about mental health, and that was really good as well. Because, what I've learned is that not everybody is interested in what I'm interested in. So I've had to, so we've had mental health ones, ones about women. We had an LGBTQ one that really pushed the boundaries a bit. And that was really enlightening, because I'm learning, I talked earlier about not having much education, and really I'm a slow processor. I kind of hear information, but it takes me a really long time to understand it. And so I'm learning. This has just been the most, so I don't know if I mentioned earlier, it's not a faith crisis, it's a faith journey. It's, and I'm just enjoying every bit of learning. So part of this being connecting people is actually, I'm a fraud really, because I'm just using my calling to educate myself. But
Isn't that
along the
wonderful?
way, other people have learned something as well. So that's good.
And it's scriptural too, you know, that if we're doing things really, really right, when it's working, then you are learning, and that process is happening, but then we're all learning together because you know, it's not just, we don't just sit there passively. There's this
Second stage of life.
yeah, that's how it should work. And so this is how, so while you know, while I was aware of you, these firesides are how I got to know, okay, that there is something going down here, and it is so good. We're in lockdown, and you know, it's really difficult. I think we've, especially women, we've had to find out how to spiritually feed ourselves and how to connect with other women when our sacred spaces are less available to us. And so seeing the creative ways that has happened has been inspiring, and here's you doing these firesides, and they were so good. Now often you'll come across someone who's doing something and you kind of think, well, okay, I'll watch it, I'm getting a lot out of this, but I can't really tell people because it gets a little bit fringy or a little bit edgy, and I don't want to, you know, hurt anyone's testimony, but I'm finding it really stimulating. So sometimes I feel like I kind of have to filter, you know, there's this really good thing happening over here. It's for me and it's about my journey. But with the firesides that you guys have been doing, I was telling everyone I met, I'm like, you have to see what's happening here.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, and that's how you got to see it, right? Because not just the fact that, you know, he were creatively addressing isolation during the lockdown, it was specifically speaking to women's learning, which I really appreciated. But you were opening up conversations that we have been aching for, really, really aching for, and you were including the voices of people that we don't normally get to hear from. That was huge. So the one, if it's okay, I'd like to ask you a little bit about one that had a huge impact for lots of people that I've spoken to, and it was the one about mixed faith relationships. So could you share a little bit about what you learned from that fireside?
Yeah, so we had, I think we had a sister who was married to a gentleman of another faith. We had a sister on whose children, 5 children, no longer attend. We had a younger sister on who doesn't attend anymore. And then another sister who was married to a member but who was not attending anymore. So I kind of was trying to cover all the bases, and they all spoke to their experience, and it was just their stories. So in all the firesides I've done, actually, it was just about letting people, giving people a platform, and I think that's what I find really important in my calling, is giving people a platform to tell their stories.
Yeah, but to jump in for a second, the people that you're giving that platform to are traditionally people that would, I mean, I feel like I'm quite edgy and I'll take a lot of risks, but giving a platform in a Relief Society fireside to a person who doesn't come to church anymore, who has disaffiliated from the church, that's huge. And as we were watching this, Alana and I were sort of messaging about it. Yes, this is so wonderful, because their voice, that sister's voice, was needed, and it was beautiful, and it was like fresh air, and you gave that person a platform. So I guess what I'm asking is, how do you get to take? I mean, I'm going to call it a risk, but I don't really mean it as a risk.
I do push the boundaries a bit, and I have had a little bit of pushback, I think, not from official sources, not from the state president or anything like that, but it doesn't suit everybody's faith journey to be reminded of these things, or even to look at them. And that's kind of okay. I mean, you know, I think we all owe it a bit to listen to each other's stories. I think we do. But if somebody is really not interested or is not ready, maybe that's the correct term,
Yep.
not ready to listen, then we have to respect that, don't we? We have to respect that we're all on our own journey, and just because somebody doesn't feel like us. So yeah, I did push the boundaries a little bit, but I was always very aware that I wanted to people who were speaking to tell their authentic stories, but I also knew that they were respectful people, you know. So I felt that we were all safe in their hands.
Yeah. See, I was just thinking there, you know, as you were talking about, you know, if people aren't ready, I think obviously, you know, when I'm not wanting to target one group of people within the church in the sense of, but I think, you know, with the older generation, certainly, they find it difficult because the church as they knew it is now completely changing because we're coming into a new modern 21st century. And so I think they find it a bit more difficult and don't want to hear some of the things that we as younger generation feel we need to address and feel that needs to be talked about. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't really necessarily always, like at first I was like, you know, people need to listen, but then I had to respect the fact that sometimes it's not that person's fault necessarily because it's just they're so set in their ways, and I've realised that through family members, and sometimes, you know, I think it is people are just too afraid to really look outside that vision they have of how the church should be. You know, and I just think, you know, with the mixed faith fireside, you know, it really resonated with me due to a family story, which I won't go into because it's not my story to tell, but I think it was just really good to listen to hear that. And again, I think it goes back to the thing in the church where, you know, growing up, and you're kind of taught that, you know, we should marry within our own faith, you know, and then it's kind of drummed in. And again, that's something I don't know that I fully have to agree with. You know, Jane's in a part member family, you know, I know other people who are the same. But, you know, it also does cause some difficulties for people in a mixed faith marriage, you know, especially when two people have went through their faith journey together and suddenly one is like, whoa, I can't do this anymore. And it's caused so many problems, and it's caused so many things for that person that they feel their life's been destroyed, and it starts eating into that marriage, and it causes problems sometimes to the point of separation, and it's hard to watch, you know, because, but again, we're not taught, like you say, how to deal with it, how to work through that.
We're just the ideal, aren't we? We're taught the ideal, well, the perceived ideal, and but we're not all going to have those perfect lives. So we need to start addressing, especially, you know, how many members have we got left? You know, the church membership is diminishing. There's not the partners around. You know, we're all in a mixed faith relationship. You know, I've got children who don't come out to church anymore. You know, we all are in a relationship with somebody who's not a member of the church, and we need to navigate. I didn't do it very well when my family stopped attending church. I wasn't taught how to cope with that. Like, what? We're not going to be in heaven anymore together? We're not that family? I wasn't taught how to cope with that. And I've had to learn how to cope with that. And I think we have to teach each other now, don't we? Speak about it. And not speak about things with that fear. Everything was so fear-based. And I don't have that fear anymore. I can't live with that fear anymore. And I suppose talking about things, listening to people's stories proves that, okay, it's not what you would want, but you can still really be happy, and it can still really be fulfilling, and it can still be the most beautiful of relationships. And what's perfect in life?
Yeah.
What is perfect in life? So,
you know, I've often said that friendship or relationships shouldn't be conditional on your faith. You know, they very much should work regardless of that. And unfortunately, you know, there are times that, and I'm not just talking in our faith, it happens in many faiths and very severely in some faiths where people are shunned, you know, because they leave the church. And it is hard. I mean, I used to get a little bit annoyed thinking, how could you do that to a person? But, you know, hearing your experience there, that's saying you weren't taught how to deal with that, it gives me a little bit of a different perspective on it, to realise that sometimes people just don't get it, maybe, you know. And but it is difficult for me, because just the person that I am, I just think, how could you still not want to know a person or be around a person just because they walk away from a faith that you believe they should still be very much a part of? But I can also see it from another perspective, and obviously you've given me a bit of food for thought as well, so thank you.
Yeah, I think it's all about fear, Alana. I think sometimes in the church, not so much these days, I think, but there's still the remnants of it. But we're such a fearful people, really. I mean, we're taught not to
We're
be
taught
fearful.
not to be, exactly.
Yeah, but everything is so fear-based.
Well, I think, you know, when we want to, it's the first half of life thing. We want to protect the group. We want to be safe. And so, you know, I get it, but I think partly why there were two aspects of the fireside that I'm really amplifying tonight that I think were really important for me. And the first thing was the fact that was reminding us that it's not just about you know, being in a marriage, being in a sort of dating relationship, you know, that kind of thing, that I traditionally thought mixed faith relationship, aka mixed faith marriage. So I was interested to, you know, in that anyway. But as you pointed out, there are so many relationships. Everyone knows someone. It's you know, all families. We don't all feel the same way. We're not all at the same faith stage, even if two people are in the church. And you had spoken about and had a guest on who had spoken about their relationship with their children leaving the church, and it hadn't occurred to me how much guilt a person felt that they had tied their family being active in the church to their personal righteousness. What have I done wrong? You know, I thought I was doing everything right. I was teaching, you know, during family home evening, doing all of these things, and I just hadn't considered that pain before, and I don't think we really speak to it in church either.
No. See, I can certainly speak to that from my mum, and I'm sure she won't mind me sharing that. Like many times growing up, I've heard my mum say, where did I go wrong? And looking back on that now, it pains me to think that my mum has to carry the guilt of, you know, at the moment, none of her children and most of her grandchildren are no longer active in the church. You know, as I said, I've took a step back for now, see if I can figure things out, or, you know, and I think that is not your guilt to carry, mum. You can do your best. Are we perfect parents? Are we perfect mothers? Do we make mistakes? Do we always 100% get things right? Of course we don't. But, you know, when people get to adults, they make their own decisions. They find their own way in life. They get to look at things and figure out what they believe about the church and what they don't. And so, you know, I often say to my mum, that is not your guilt to carry. You need to let that go, you know. And as a lot of people have been saying, I've been hearing a lot of people saying this, and it's so right, is it's not for us to figure out.
No, but
it's for God to figure out at the other side what happens.
I absolutely agree. And I was thinking about that the other day. I was thinking about, you know, Kevin's role and my role as young marrieds and as we've got older together. So his role was, you know, as a provider. You know, we really kind of lived I had odd jobs here and there, but he was the provider. So he had his work, we had his family responsibilities, had his church callings, he had his family responsibilities, and he had like service or sacrifice. But with a woman, it is family, church callings, and self-sacrifice.
Yes.
They sacrifice themselves a lot. And as you get older in the church, for a woman, a lot of women I've seen, you kind of, your family grow up, and so more often than not these days, they stop attending church. as you become older, you're not really fit for primary and young women's. There's not really many call-ins now in Relief Society. So, you know, where do they put you? You know, your voice is really silenced as you get older as a woman. And so you've got two options, really. You kind of have to change what you think about things. So you kind of go on a sort of self-discovery about your faith and what you feel, or you become feel so guilty because you haven't got what you've worked your whole life for, and that's to have your children around you and your grandchildren attending church with you, going to the temple and doing all those things. And so you either end up having to feel a failure and having to put extra service and self-sacrifice in to make up for that failure, or you have to start reworking what you really believe in. And I've kind of done a bit of both, but mostly it's about this reworking about what I feel about eternal families and what I feel about my children not attending church anymore. Because if I didn't, I'd be too sad. I can't live the rest of my life that sad.
Yeah. We've talked about that, Jane, you know, about the eternal families perspective of it, and how awful it must be for women to think, I'm not going to have my children, you know, as a parent, as a mother, you know, and that's why I feel a little bit differently about that. You know, it's not something I'm going to get into great detail. I don't know that I can fully say that I believe that God, who is love, God who is inclusive of everyone, you know, is going to...
We have real life in that podcast, and so what
Sorry, I know.
you're
She's
on
been really good. She has been really good the past few weeks. And normally
good.
She would normally be in bed, to be fair, for school, but our schools are off tomorrow due to the voting. So
for our past viewers, just
make the most of it.
Real life.
Yeah, it's a cliche, but they will be gone.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah,
Alana's daughter knows that the priority here is hugs from her mum, and she can have them when she needs, and we will happily facilitate that. We can
no, she's trying to look after the dog and see if the dog needs her dentist stick, which she's already had. But
I love it. I love it.
Well, I think it's the general going back. I think it's a general. It might be a generational thing, because I think what you in your late.
I'm 40 this year.
40s. What?
I'm 40 this year.
Yeah.
Next month.
So it's sort of roughly the age of my girls, not my boys. They're a bit younger, but yeah, my girls just don't think like that. And I don't know if even the church, you know, even the daughters who are church attending, I don't even think she thinks like that. I think it's a generational thing. I think it's maybe a thing that our generation has left to live through and figure out, and hopefully.
I'm so glad you remembered what I was saying, because I drew a total blank. I was like, what was I talking about before my daughter interrupted? So yeah, like I just again, as I say, I can't believe that God, who is love and God who created us, would not allow us to be with our families in the next life, just because, you know, how is it fair to my mum, who's done her best? You know, my mum doesn't believe that, she doesn't see that, but I see it. She's done her best from the knowledge she has, and you know, my mum's an amazing woman. I probably don't tell her enough, but what a weight to carry, to think I can't be with my children. I would rather die tomorrow than think I can't be with my child in the next life. I just couldn't, and I think I can't be at peace with that as a teaching of the church. I can't, because, you know, like one of my sisters, that's one of the main things she really struggled with about the church. You know, she kind of came back to church many years ago, and then she's left, and she's spoken to me about that. How are you telling me? I mean, I don't really think she believes in God anymore, but if there's a God, that me, who's a good person, and my family, and we try to be good people, and, you know, we support everyone, we love people, are you telling me that because I don't attend a church that we can't be together, that God is going to separate us? You know, and then it is problematic for people. And I think more and more people are starting to view things a little bit differently, and have a little change of thinking. I often think, would I get in trouble for saying this because it goes against what we've been taught in church? But I have to now use my voice and say, well, I can't be at peace with that. I can't.
Yeah.
It's my experience. It's how I feel, and I can't change that. I can't change how I feel because a doctrine or a church says that this is how it should be.
I mean, the United Kingdom might be different from, say, in America or whatever, but I think because my generation were the most converts, well, apart from the early church, but there was a lot of converts in the 70s because of the Osman phenomenon and stuff like that. We've had to live that experience, that is the first real lived experience, and maybe the generation before us, like 10, 15 years before my generation. And we've had to live through it, and it is kind of making sense of, well, what does this mean about the church doctrine? What does this mean about the temple then? What's the temple for if I believe my children are going to be with me anyway? And it's kind of sorting all that through in your mind, isn't it? And
yeah, and I most definitely have to figure it out.
You just, as you said, Alana, you have to make sense of it in your head somehow. Otherwise, you couldn't cope with it, could you?
No,
I don't think I could, and because I mean, I wrote something a few months ago. Like, if I believed that so black and white, I would either have to cut my daughter. I think I said I have to cut God out or shut her down. And I can't do either one of those. I can't cut God out of my life. I just can't. And I can't shut my daughter's experience and how she feels. And she's an intelligent, spiritual young woman. And she's chosen a journey that she needs to go on. And I can't tell her that it's wrong. If she has the Holy Ghost and the Holy Ghost is speaking to her, and for her to live an authentic life, she has to take this road. I can't tell her it's wrong for her. I just can't.
Absolutely.
And I think the other aspect of that, in my experience, so we have a son who has special needs, and it's wonderful to be able to hear clearly re-emphasized often by church members and leaders that that our son has made it, that he will be, he will be where he is going to be, and all I have to do is to reach that. And there's no atonement mentioned, only I have to reach that. So so as parents, we're either grieving the lack of perfection that we're not reaching, or we're constantly still trying to reach it. One of the other aspects of the other aspect that I'd wanted to pull out of the fireside that was really important for me was, so we've talked about the impact on families when people when we're in a mixed faith relationship. But I think what's really important is, because we are in the British Isles, the impact it has on a ward is just almost as big. So when families are sort of no longer all in the same place, we really can see our wards of the heart being sort of ripped out of them. We don't really know what to do in a ward when one of a couple goes less active, or when the children leave. So I wondered if you could speak to that, and the fact that you've had these sort of leadership opportunities, that how can we be more supportive in wards, understanding that every one of us is in a mixed faith relationship, and that our wards themselves, there's all different sort of versions of how we live out our faith within that ward too.
A few months ago, I thought I would speak to a few people who have stopped coming to church, just to really mostly young people, because that's who we're losing, a lot of our young people. And That really is a big sadness to me, because I just see a lot of old people changing chairs in in the ward council, and that's sad to me. And some of them just feel like they're projects all the time. And when the church reaches out to them, they feel like they're a project. So it triggers something in them that it's not coming from. I don't think we've done it for a long time, but before we had ward conferences, we'd have the Friday, everybody would have to come together and then be given a list from the bishop, and we'd all have to go off in our cars and tell everybody that ward conference is coming on and how much we love them and how much we want them to come. And if we were really friends, wouldn't those people still be in contact with us, even if they stopped attending church? If we were really friends and if they felt that love, wouldn't they just still be in contact with us? Why is it when people stop attending church that they really have to distance themselves for their own peace of mind? And I've kind of been thinking, I haven't got my head around it.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about that a lot. What it is we do as a people that makes people, when they stop attending church, they want to distance themselves from their brothers and sisters too. Yeah. What is it about me that triggers somebody?
See, I can relate to that, because I throughout my teenage years, my adult life, I've left the church a couple of times, and that has been very much my feeling. Not necessarily that I feel. I guess in some ways there has been a part of that where I felt I've had to distance myself, and maybe thinking about it could possibly be, because, and Jane will tell you how good I am at this, the guilt you feel because you're not living the way you should. And because I don't know, and I could be completely wrong, but I just have always had the impression that if you're not attending church, people don't really want to know you so much. And I'm not saying everyone, but the biggest majority. And that was something I struggled with. And I have a friend who has the same experience, who feels when you leave the church, no one wants to know you. And that's sad. That's sad.
And sorry, Debbie, on you go.
No, you go, Jane.
Well, I was thinking that there has to be something between quarantining, the idea that if someone's leaving, or someone has concerns, or perhaps is living their faith in a less orthodox way, that's sort of seen as less of a threat. So we have to quarantine them and make sure that it doesn't, affect anyone else around them in the ward. And the sort of very real fact that, for most people at church, our relationships often are built somewhere in our church lifestyle. So, in the same way as I've had jobs over the years where I don't keep in touch with most of them who were really great friends because we don't work in the same place anymore. So, there's a sort of natural, we don't really have that place or that thing in common so much. I wonder how we can get to somewhere between a natural, okay, we're possibly just coming to the end of, seeing each other all the time, to I really don't want to know. I really don't want to hear what it is that you're saying. You know what I mean? What I'm wondering is, when you mentioned, serving a mission, and now we have missionaries who are women who can wear trousers, and the dress standards are sort of looking different.
It's not feminine though. It's not very feminine.
It just hurts my heart.
Says who?
Yeah,
says who?
Yeah, I think
I live in leggings all the time.
Yeah,
That's my
if gender is really, if gender is really eternal, I don't think my wearing trousers will affect it. I think we're good. But yeah. So what I'd like to ask is, what gives you hope?
Okay. So the hoping what? Hoping people staying, hoping.
I guess
just
there's
hope.
two aspects. I like to sort of ask a very general question and let people do what they want with it. So yeah,
Okay.
what I guess what I mean is what you as an individual progressing in this faith journey, but also, you know, for the kind of church that you would like to see for you know, for here in a Church of Jesus. Yeah, as broad as you'd like to make it.
Yeah, I think the younger generation give me hope, because I think they're probably a lot educated than a lot of my generation, and they see like I know some members have got the kind of, oh, this is a wicked world kind of thing, and there's the world and there's us. But honestly, I think we can learn such a lot from the world. There are bad things going on, but there's always been bad things going on, isn't there?
See, thank you for saying that. I feel like the voice in the wilderness when when we're talking about this in church, and I'm like, but you know, our human rights are you know, so much
good.
improved. When
you see these kids marching, you know, and fighting for LGBTQ rights and using their voice. I'm hoping that the younger generation will bring that into the church and not, I don't want to say, well, I'm going to say it, not put up with the crap that we've put up with, basically.
Absolutely.
That they're going to demand more. Yeah, I'm hoping that's going to happen.
I definitely think that's already happening, you know, just from what I'm seeing is that Jane and I talk about this quite often, how the younger generation are waking up to, you know, I still kind of class myself youngish, mid, you know, but they're starting to waken up and they're starting to realise, no, the things are not okay, you know, and what worries me is that if we continue in the way we're going, we're already losing so many people, not just in the UK and Europe, worldwide. I worry for the future of the church. My mum said something to me earlier, you know, where she said, you know, but, you know, they say the church will never be taken from the earth. I said, yeah, I can kind of be okay with that. I said, and I don't know. I think I just have to say what I feel. I sometimes think I have to put this barrier up where I don't say what I feel. But I said, but Mum, you know, that's God's plan. But men are in the church and they can get it wrong.
Even if there's like a branch in Utah somewhere, it's still on the earth, but it's like, it's not
I believe it can. It can change, because if people start to say, no, this isn't right, and they don't make those changes, you know, the buildings might still stand. There might be few members, but as a church, we may not be what we are taught that the church is going to fill the whole earth, and I don't see that happening at all, in my opinion, because we look at I mean, I've always been taught growing up, you know, that the church is growing and it's growing massively, but I believe that's what they want you to believe, because I've recently heard stats, and this is going back a few years, of the percentage of membership within attending the church, and it's very, very, very minute, you know, and so I think we need to do something. We need to change something, because if we don't, you know, we're losing the younger generation, who are the future of the church.
And that's why, you know, a lot of people would say, you know, I put things on Facebook and maybe you do as well. And, you know, I have had criticism about it being detrimental to the church and I shouldn't be saying these things. But do you know what? I love this church, you know, and I can tell from what you're saying, Alana, you love it so much. You know, it's been our whole lives. I have, from the age of 16, I have put my whole life into this church because I know it's of God and there are beautiful fruits in it, and God is in the people. And I really believe that. And I want it to thrive. And that's why we say these things, not because we want to just be a Debbie Downer, but just because we love it.
Yeah,
we love it.
And I think that's why certain people like Peter are speaking out, because it's not to bring the church down, it's not to take people away from the church, it's just to say, wake up and look what needs to change, look what, you know, but obviously it's seen as
Yeah, and
Speaking
just
against the
to
church.
clarify, so Alana's referring to another podcaster from the UK. I think he gets a shout out once a week, but yeah,
Yeah.
we've a little
Because he's got lots to say, that's why.
apparently us Brits have a lot to say. But I think that what you're alluding to, Debbie, I think it's worth keeping in mind that we in the United Kingdom, we do say what's on our mind a bit more. We do, we're good at public commentary, and so if something's not working, just saying it doesn't make you less faithful, especially when what I have seen is how you are speaking to the pain of people who feel like they maybe haven't been welcomed, or that they've had painful experiences, or that there is no place for them. You're opening up conversations and spaces to have those conversations. And that is huge. And of course, it's going to, you know what? You're a woman, never mind being a woman in the church. No matter what you do, someone will have something to say about it. And that's the reality. But I guess we're in a church. We had a congregation. Our congregation had a little discussion group earlier on, and I was so inspired by the fact that beforehand, a couple of the participants were having a really good discussion, a really good debate about consent issues, issues, and then the sort of Black Lives Matter movement was sort of brought up later on. None of it in a political way. People having differences of opinion and feeling really strongly about it, and that being okay. And what I love that you're doing is that you're letting people know that it's okay to have maybe a less orthodox faith, or to have questions, or to have pain. And I just wanted to thank you for doing that. Your work has been so inspiring and has blessed so many people. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Jane. But can I just say that it's those sisters who have been willing to tell their stories. They're just the heroes, aren't they? And I'm just grateful for them, because they've we're all in this together, aren't we? We're all just trying to make sense of it together and just move forward together. Because I want to stay. So stay. It's I've had a confirmation that the church is the place that I should stay.
Yeah.
And I'm pleased about that, because I'm happy to be in it, although obviously I'd like a few things to change. But I want people, my husband, he's a bit more black and white in his belief. He's a bit more temple going, kind of doing the work kind of person. He hates meetings and stuff, but still but I want there to be room for all of us,
Amen.
For the feet and the hands and the legs and all the parts of the body. Just want there to be room for us all, and to make room for each other, really.
So I guess to wrap up, do you know what? I'm just going to ask, is there anything that you would like to share as closing thoughts, Debbie?
No, just thanks for inviting me on. It's been nice, actually, to because in the discussion you kind of thought, because I keep learning, I'm always learning, and so it's just been nice to kind of get some ideas about, you mentioned something about people leaving, and that middle ground of maybe drifting away from friends but still wanting to keep some contact. And it's thinking to me, well, maybe I'm expecting too much of both people. Maybe there's just a casual meeting so you made me think about that. So it's been nice to kind of develop my thoughts a bit. So thank you for that. And thank you for all the work you're doing.
Oh,
thank you.
It really is such an exciting time, and I'm so inspired. Again, because I do feel strongly about gendered issues, especially the work that women have been doing in the church this past while is incredible. Viewers, thank you for all your chat comments. I really appreciate them. Please know that you can continue to get in touch with us, either on YouTube or on Facebook. We will put up links for things that we have mentioned tonight that might be things that you want to follow up on. But I guess in closing, again, I'm just re-emphasizing, Debbie, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. You're an absolute inspiration to me, and I'm so glad to have you as a friend. I'm so inspired by the fact that even when we're having a discussion where we're asking you the questions, you are still, open-hearted and learning and thinking about, what you can take from a conversation. It's very, very cool to me. So I just want to bless your journey and just thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Debbie.
Well, everyone, we're going to close the live stream here. Thank you so much for your questions and comments. You know where to reach us, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye.